Calling the meeting back to order, exactly 10 minutes. Thank you all for helping out. We're going to move on to information and reports. Our next item, 4.1, is an update on the El Camino College Compton Center.
Thank you, President Baum, members of the board. I'm going to turn this over to Deputy Chancellor Skinner, who will introduce his colleagues from Compton College. As you know, this board has been involved with Compton for a number of years, about 7 or 8 now, and they're here today with some progress. Eric?
Good afternoon, President Baum, Chancellor Harris, members of the board. This item is an update on El Camino College Compton Center. This is, I'll just make a couple remarks because you have a panel that's really going to lay out the details for you. I would frame those, though, in the light of the presentation that Vice Chancellor Tenna provided earlier in terms of the system's role in providing assistance, oversight, intervention when our colleges struggle. A key tenet in our approach to that work is to take the least invasive steps necessary, and the concept of local control is really baked into the culture of our system. That said, there are times, extreme circumstances, when more radical intervention is necessary. 2 times in the history of this system, the board has taken the strongest action possible, which is to strip a local board of power, to insert a special trustee to operate as that local board. Those 2 times were with Compton Community College and with the next item you'll have up shortly. Given the severity of those actions, given the extreme challenges that were presented in both those situations, and given the strong action by the board in both those instances, it's critical that you from time to time are updated so that you understand the progress that's being made. Obviously, the focus of that intervention is to save these colleges, to strengthen them, and sooner rather than later return them to local control. So that's the objective that we approach this work with. The story of Compton Community College goes back to 2006, and you'll hear more of the history here shortly from the presenters. But you'll see that there have been many challenges in that in terms of that college's recovery. But great strides have been made, and I think that you'll hear some about that progress today. So what I'd like to do is introduce the Chief Executive Officer of the Compton Center, Dr. Keith Curry, Tom Henry, who's your special trustee at Compton Community College District, and Barbara Perez, who represents El Camino Community College District, the partner district under whose accreditation the center operates, and she's the vice president for the center. So with that, I'm going to turn it over, I believe, first to Tom Henry, and he'll take it from there.
Thank you, Vice Chancellor Skinner. President Baum, Chancellor Harris, members of the Board of Governors, just a quick note of appreciation for Chancellor Harris's leadership and Vice Chancellor Skinner's support of me personally as your special trustee. It's been invaluable. Obviously, the support has been great for the Compton Community College District as well. The state initially engaged in 2012. The state chancellor did at that time when he was concerned with insolvency issues that were swirling around the district. And in 2003, there were concerns of insolvency and potential bankruptcy. In March 2004, the district was actually unable to make payroll and pay vendor warrants. They actually had to borrow funds from their bond fund, which were questionable, obviously. In 2003-04, that fiscal year, they were negative cash for 10 of the prior 12 months. And then in May of 2004, the chancellor at that time appointed the first special trustee, was actually Dr. Art Tyler. In May 2004, the chancellor requested the Fiscal Crisis and Management Assistance Team, which you heard of earlier, to conduct an extraordinary audit and a comprehensive review and actually provide a recovery plan. And then in January 2005, ACCJC put the institution on show cause. And then in June 2005, ACCJC terminated the accreditation of Compton Community College. In March 2006, I was actually appointed by this board and the chancellor to be the special trustee. May and June of 2006, the district was essentially insolvent. We were required to borrow from the state chancellor's office $5 million to make payroll at that time. And then in June, I actually came back to the chancellor's office and I got a poker term, we're all in. Went back to the Los Angeles County Superintendent of Schools office, requested from them a $5 million advancement to make payroll and vendor warrants for June of that year. And based upon the hope that we would get legislation and emergency loan, they honored that and provided those resources. In June 2006, Governor Schwarzenegger passed AB 318 Diamond Lease Bill. And President Baum, I would submit to you, it's a really great transparency and accountability bill. Has a lot in there, but it's worked remarkably well. And AB 318 offered a $30 million line of credit. They provided FICMAT, the Fiscal Crisis and Management Team, to do a conference review to provide a recovery plan, which to this day we are following. And FICMAT comes in annually to update that review. AB 318 authorized the chancellor to provide a special trustee with certain conditions and authorities and responsibilities. AB 318 provided for the appointment of advisory committee, and to this day we meet regularly with that special trustee advisory committee, in addition to the elected board of trustees, which we meet regularly. In since 2004, there have been 6 special trustees. I was actually the 3rd and now the 6th. Each bringing, in my opinion, their own set of expertise and skills to assist the institution. CCCD is fiscally solvent today. It has great leadership. It is an engaged board that works very collaboratively with the CEO, works collaboratively with the special trustee in the partnering district, El Camino. Just a quick comment about El Camino. They were the only institution in the state to submit an RFP, and every institution was invited. I personally went to chancellor's offices, made phone calls. El Camino was the only district that submitted, actually at great risk and challenges. They've done remarkably well. The Board of Trustees at El Camino and the leadership of President Fallow have been invaluable to the institution, the progress that we've made. We continue to show good progress relative to the FICMAT's operational areas. There are 5 of them: academics, fiscal, governance, personnel, and facilities. And it allows us to show and demonstrate progress over time. We're really optimistic about the eligibility application that's just been recently submitted to ACCJC. We're optimistic about the review and the ultimate approval, we believe. My colleagues are here today to talk about some of the challenges, perhaps, and the progress and achievements we've made. Dr. Curry is the CEO of the Compton Community College District, and then Vice President Perez is the El Camino Compton Center Administrator assigned to our site there at the district, and they're going to share progresses and achievements. Thank you very much.
I would like to say, my name is Keith Curry, CEO, Compton Community College District. I'd like to say thank you for the opportunity to provide an update to the Board of Governors, to the Board of Governors and also to Chancellor Harris. First of all, I'd like to say the progress at Compton has happened through stability in our leadership. If you look at, we have our special trustee who has been at Compton for the last 3 years, back at Compton for the last 3 years. The superintendent president of El Camino College, Thomas Fallow, has been a part of the partnership since 2006. We also have myself, who has been a part of the partnership since 2006, Vice President Perez, who has been a part of the partnership since 2006, and then also our Chief Business Officer, who was hired 3 years ago, Felipe Lopez, who has been a part of us, who has been working with us for the last 3 years. So for the last 3 years, we have had consistent leadership at the Compton Community College District and also at the center. Through that leadership, if you look at the number of hires we have made among faculty, staff, and administrators, since 2006, we have hired 106 employees, 47 faculty members, 39 staff, and also 20 administrators. This shows a sign that employment is available within the Compton Community College District, and people see a hiring of individuals as hope that the college is moving forward as it relates to accreditation. But also what we have worked on is fiscal stability. As Trustee Henry has mentioned, the finances of the district in 2004 and 2005 was unstable. So our goal over the last 3 years has been to stabilize the financials of the district. First thing was we have a 5-year fiscal management plan for Compton Community College District. In our 5-year fiscal management plan, our annual reserve is our board policy mandates that our annual reserve cannot be below 10%. So in our 5-year fiscal management plan, our average reserve is 16%. We've also developed and also was approved by the special trustee a plan for our other post-employee benefits obligations. And there's a lot of reading about that in the newspapers the last couple of weeks. But for our district, our liability is $15.2 million. Our annual budget is $32 million. But our liability for OPEB is $15.2 million. In May of 2013, we established an irrevocable trust. As of now, our irrevocable trust has $1 million in it. We expect to have it fully funded within 20 years. We have also reduced the number of audit findings for Compton Community College District. When you look at our financials for the district over the last 4 years, when I took office in 2011, our number of audit findings was at 26 audit findings. In 2011-12, our number of audit findings was 13. In 2012-13, our audit findings number was 6. In 2013-14, our audit finding number was 0. A blank page means a lot when you look at an audit book. Our staff within our business office and also within our management staff have worked very hard over the last couple of years to reduce the number of audit findings to ensure that our district is fiscally stable. Also on our campus, there's been a lot of work that's been done as it relates to facilities. And I would be remiss if I don't say thank you to the Chancellor's Office and their staff for their support as it relates to our facilities projects on our campus. This past year, we completed over $44 million worth of facilities projects. Included in those projects is our utilities infrastructure project, campus-wide lighting, also road improvements on campus, new utilities, as well as a new central plant. We're also in the process of building a new allied health building for nursing and also child development program, which is a $12.4 million project. That project is to be completed in the fall of 2015. We're also working with the Chancellor's Office. We have a new project with the Instructional Building 1. Our buildings were built in the 1950s. As I tell individuals on campus, the buildings are cold in the wintertime, hot in the summertime. So our heating, ventilation, air conditioning in the row buildings don't work at times. And so the only way to improve those buildings is by building new facilities. In my opinion, facilities give people hope to see change that's happening within their community. And so what has happened with the new facilities on campus, people are surprised to see how great the campus is looking. And with the new Instructional Building 1, which would be instructional building, would be a new instructional building for our students. We also opened in the spring of 2014 a building that was sitting on our campus for 6 years unoccupied. Think about if you're a community college student walking around campus and you see a building that's gated off with green covering so you can't see inside, that's not open for students. That building opened on April 15, 2015, which is a brand new Library Student Success Center, a 42,000 square foot building which houses our library and also our Student Success Center. Now that is the hub for student success on our campus. We also have a little theater, which is a small project that will be completed sometime next fall. But a great validation for us and the success that has happened, not only from the hiring of new employees, also being able to fix the finances of the district, and also build new facilities. On November 4th, the voters within our community voted to approve our facilities bond in an amount of $100 million. The voters, 78.39%. That's the highest vote passage rate for any community college bond since 2002. And we're very proud of that. So there's a lot of great things that are happening in Compton, but it's been a team effort with our partnering district, El Camino College, and also State Chancellor's Office and the Special Trustee, but also the community with our elected board members and also our Special Trustee Advisory Committee. I'd like to hand it over to Barbara Perez.
Thank you.
Thank you for allowing me to talk a little bit about the Compton Center itself. Just so you know how much it has changed, in 2006-07, our student enrollment was 6,723 students. Last year, we were 12,655. Our peak was in 2010-11 during the height of the recession, where we got up to approximately 16,000 students. And believe me, that was when the campus felt like a college. And we're working very hard to get that number back up. One of the areas that we have is to make this the place to go for our graduating students in the Compton district. Fortunately, right now, we don't get all of our students, but we're putting into plans to do that. We're actually starting an early college this fall with the Compton Unified School District. And so hopefully this will make people realize that you can come to the Compton Center to get a good education. The other thing that has changed Since 2010, in about 2010, our African American Hispanic population was about 50-50. One was 41%, the other is 40%. But our community is approximately now 70% Hispanic. And what we have seen over the last 3 years, our Latino contingent on campus has grown to 48%. So at least we're reaching the population and bringing them in. We offer quite a few number of degrees and certificate programs, but you can see that in the last 4 years, we went from 157 degrees to 261 degrees awarded at graduation, 78 certificates to 98 certificates. So we have a constant, over the years, we've constantly increased our number of degrees that we're awarding, which is, of course, our goals. The other thing is we started new programs. We have a first-year experience program. We started in 2009. We have now had over 600 students going forward. We have, this year we have 7 cohorts. Next year we plan on 8 cohorts, and one of them, it will be a first time we've ever done it. We're doing an accelerated math cohort to try and get the students into their math earlier in the process. We've increased our supplemental instruction and peer tutoring processes. I want to say we're doing about 50 classes right now with supplemental instruction. We instituted an honors transfer program. In the past couple years, it has been contract only, but we're hoping to get enough students in the program so that we can actually offer a full honors course to that program. We instituted the Alpha Gamma Sigma Honor Society, and then also for the community, we added 2 programs, a certificate in the aerospace fastener program, and then also a heating, ventilation, and air conditioning, both certificate and degree program. And as I said, when your air conditioning goes out, they can't ship that one overseas, so they're going to always have a good job. And then, as you heard, when I came on campus permanently in 2010, we started going through our eligibility. First thing we did is we took the 21 eligibility requirements and analyzed where we were. Did we meet those eligibility standards? At the conclusion, we found out that we essentially met 16 of them. There were 2 that we did not meet at the time and 3 that we partially met. Over the past 4 years, we have worked, the faculty, staff, and administration, and with some of the help of the students, we have worked very diligently to meet those standards. And January 25th, 2015, we submitted our eligibility application to ACCJC. And so hopefully we will hear soon. And as we've been telling our faculty and staff, be prepared, because now we're going to have to do a self-evaluation.
Well, thank you very much. We'll go to, you do have some
we have
members
3
of the public
speakers
who would like to address the board, so we're going to need to make room at the table, and then we'll go to board comments.
Okay, we have 3: David Morse, Richard Hansen, and Dean Murakami.
President Baum, board members, Chancellor Harris. I want to stress the Academic Senate's belief in the importance of returning Compton to a fully accredited independent college. We've had numerous resolutions over the years supporting this idea. We have worked with the Compton College faculty to help them to do the things that they need to do in terms of curriculum development and such to improve their services. Just more recently, Dr. Curry asked us to allow for the attendance of several members of his faculty and administration to attend our Accreditation Institute just last month. And even though the institute was full, we found room because we find it that important to have Compton College there and involved. And I say it in that way with full respect for and appreciation for El Camino and for the effort that they have made and for helping to continue the services to that community during this time period. But I refer to Compton College because we want Compton College back on its own. And so with no disrespect at all intended to El Camino, but the Academic Senate offers its assistance in any way that we can to Compton College, to the Chancellor's office, and to the Board of Governors. Anything we can do to help move this forward, we're prepared to do. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Richard Hansen. You have
Good
3 minutes,
afternoon.
Mr. Hansen.
Good afternoon. Yeah, I'm here. I represent the Community College Independents, or the unaffiliated unions in the state for faculty. And I agree totally with David's comments. And I hope that, as we're going to hear, I think with City College reports also, that the board will begin to plan for the restoration of the Board of Trustees to their power, and that we get Compton College back for its community. Thank you very much. I would add one other thing, though. I just want to introduce our next speaker, Dean Murakami. I remember when it came to City College's issues, his first comments were to say, let's have an exit plan from the troubles of a special trustee. So I hope we're moving in that direction in both of these cases today. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Murakami.
Thank you. Dean Murakami with the Faculty Association of California Community Colleges. And I also want to commend El Camino College for stepping up, because they were the only college to step up, asked every district around in the area. No one stepped up except for El Camino. So you have to say thank you very, very much for that. But, for fact, our position has always, from the very, very beginning, is that Compton College must return to full restoration status as an accredited college. That has to be the game plan at the end. And, without a very specific plan and timeline, for that to occur, it has left what we feel from our faculty that we interact with, it's left them in a lot of limbo here. Simply because they're not El Camino faculty, and because now they're not even Compton faculty, they're not really fully integrated into the shared governance process at El Camino. So all of a sudden they have no voice in anything. So when it comes to hiring and also development of specific programs and those sorts of things, marketing and recruitment of students, really they have almost no say in that, and that's what they've expressed to us tremendously. And all of a sudden, this is part of the reason why a number of the faculty have told us is that really the identity of Compton College has changed a lot, and that's the reason why it has lost its identity in the community, quite honestly. And so hopefully that's being built back up, but I'm telling you that for the faculty that have been there from the beginning of 2006 on, they've felt disenfranchised. They really do, and we hear that every day from them. So it is, again, we really would like you to put together a very sincere, comprehensive, strategic plan to return Compton College to full accreditation status. I know that's going to take time. I know it's going to be difficult, but really, for the sake of the faculty there that have been there through the wars here, I think it's essential that you do that. Thank you.
Thank you. We have no further speakers.
Board member comments or questions? Member Baca?
Yeah, I agree. Thanks to El Camino for stepping up to work on this, and congratulations to the three of you on the work that you've been doing there. There's been certainly a lot of work, and I would hope that that we would get Compton back to its own accreditation, and the work that's been done over the last few years certainly has been done, I think, mostly with that intent. I assume that some folks at El Camino would be fine with a change towards that. So, hopefully we'll move in that direction as expediently as we can. The $100 million bond measure. Congratulations on that. I agree completely that part of the trick in getting our students into the college and getting them successful is the facilities making sure that those are up to speed. We did visit the library a few years ago, and that did sit vacant for quite some time. I'm just curious what it was that allowed for the opening to actually occur, because it just kind of sat there without going into a lot of detail. Was there additional funding done, or was there work on the facility?
It goes back to leadership, and also the partnering district and Compton Community College District working together. And the reason why I say leadership is the staff. Our Chief Business Officer, Felipe Lopez, and our Facilities Director, Linda Owens, they made sure it happened, working with our legal counsel to make sure that we followed the process, and we had funding available through our current bond dollars to open the building. For me, to see that building to open was important because that gave the community assurances that we're working hard, but also that we're following through on what we say we're going to do.
There were architectural challenges, though.
There were architectural
those
challenges.
Just kind of really worked. And
those
worked
architectural challenges, we had to get those. We had to get the building fixed, and it took some time, but we were able to get it fixed and open.
How much more did it cost you to do that?
$4 million.
But didn't the contractors have some liability with some of the poor craftsmanship or design in that building?
We did go through the legal process. We're able to have some success in regards to some settlements with a couple of different firms. But the key for us was identifying the problem and also fixing the problem, but also budgeting with our current bond dollars. So it took us approximately 12 months to get the project completed.
That's great.
From start to finish.
Well, the district was damaged significantly, so it's just great to see it to where it is today.
Vice President Estolano.
Great. Well, I'm going to ask the question that Dean Murakami asked of us. Do you have a specific timeline and a plan to return to accreditation? I'm going to ask our special trustee, Mr. Henry.
Yeah, just a clarification that when the accreditation was terminated from Compton College disappeared.
I understand.
So it doesn't exist, and the accredited courses are offered through El Camino Community College through AB 318, the partnership, and I would submit that AB 318 in itself does lay out and charges the responsibility relative to accreditation. However, as you well know, ACCJC has their own policies and procedures and standards and eligibility requirements that El Camino Community College will have to adhere to. So that's the first step, and this is when I returned a few years back, we've continued to communicate this message that the first step is we have to have the center accredited by law, by standards, by policies under El Camino Community College first. Mm-hmm. Once that, and we know the timeline relative to that, and the first step of that timeline was the submission of that eligibility application. And so we have a sense of how long it's going to take for that review. We have a sense how long the self-study will take, how long the next steps will be. Once it's accredited under El Camino Community College, I feel, and we're not clear in terms of the timeline yet, but I think the substantive change that would be required, the authority change, is much quicker, and it's not as complicated as the process that we're currently under. So we have a timeline, and I'd let Dr. Curry mention the timeline. We know how long that process is going to take for El Camino Community College Center to be accredited. Once that occurs, I think the next step is a little quicker.
Dr. Curry, what's your sense of the timeline?
It'll take from 8 to 10 years once your eligibility application is approved.
8 to 10 years.
Correct.
Yeah, think in terms of
a brand new college.
Yeah, thank you very much.
I mean, that's what we're
Right.
talking about, a brand new college. For it to be up and independent, its own college.
And I want to, the prior speakers, I guess to say I take exception would be too strong, but I would submit to you that the leadership at Compton Community College District, academic senate leadership, faculty leadership, union leadership, I think that they would be expressing different terms relative to the progress and collaboration, collegial commitment to the community. Everyone, to a person, wants to see us speeded up. There's anybody, the elected board, if they were here today, would say to you, we're engaged, we support the state trustee, we love our CEO, can we speed it up? So there isn't anybody that's not saying that. The problem that we're faced with is that we have statutory requirements and guidelines and standards, eligibility requirements that have to be adhered to, whether you're Compton Community College District, El Camino, or any other community college in the state. And that's what we're grappling with.
Just one last point. I want to commend all three of you for coming up here today and give us a very thorough report. Many of us are new to the board. We were not here when this all occurred, and so Dr. Henry, I appreciate the chronology you gave us. That was extremely helpful. Dr. Curry, having you walk through all the financials, extremely helpful. And Dr. Perez, going through the changes in leadership that El Camino College has shown. And I particularly take note of your efforts to make the composition of the student body reflect the composition of the surrounding community. Really think that is a very noteworthy accomplishment, very difficult to achieve given all the constraints. And so I commend you all for the progress you're making, and whatever we can do, whatever I can do personally. I have a personal connection to community college, to Compton. My mother taught there for a number of years in the 80s and early 90s. And I've been on the campus many times. It is an essential resource for that community. And talking about having a pathway from the surrounding high school district, it could not be more important. I'm delighted to hear that the Aerospace Fastener program is happening there. It's a fine program. It's really doing terrific. It's great to hear that it's at Compton. Thank you.
Member Avalos?
Yep. I'd like to echo what Member Stellano also mentioned. I appreciate everything you mentioned and everything you're doing. From my perspective, obviously, having a community college in the community that you're all in means a lot to that community. The demographics shift quite a bit. And to me, when I look at the data, which I was researching the data right now, your overall completion rate right now is about 31%, right?
Mm-hmm.
Of course, if you come prepared, college prepared, college ready, it's 70%. But of course, we have 27% of the students who actually complete come unprepared, right? So those that are completing, those that are unprepared, that's about 27%. So that's bringing down your numbers. So the question I have is, what are we doing at Compton to help with the remediation programs? Are there any fast-track programs to really help these students that come in, which, for the most part, is a large proportion of your students?
As I mentioned, we do have an accelerated math program that has been quite successful. We're trying to offer more sections of it, but it is intimidating to students, but it allows a student to go essentially from arithmetic. If they apply themselves, they can get all the way into intermediate algebra. And we have had tracking through the students on this. It has been very successful. We've introduced a Math Academy, which we have run at every break, summer and the winter break and everything else. The students have been moving up 2 to 3 sections from where they originally test. So we're moving them through there because as most of the work has shown, the longer a student is in basic skills, the less likely they are to finish. And so we're doing that. El Camino itself has played around with acceleration and the English. They had a reading and writing separate acceleration program, which they weren't as successful with it as we were. And since it was a experimental course, they went a different direction. And so we're reintroducing it as for Compton, because what we found is a lot of our students, especially our male students, are testing in lower than the females are. And so by getting them into this accelerated reading and writing program, we're able to catch them up within one semester. And this year we're running 2 male cohorts in our FYE program. And that has been very successful in doing that too.
One of the things that really surprises me also is the data when, according to data, 73% are female at Compton, which is out of proportion.
Actually,
it seems like it's large, right?
As part of our student equity thing, one of our goals is to increase our male enrollment.
Okay. And so, for us, it was great hearing from you all, and if there's an ask of us, right, in terms of how we can help you try to figure this out, how to get completion rates higher, how to make sure we're helping in terms of the students that come in unprepared. I think there's a lot of models that are happening in Santa Ana and Long Beach that are, working with the local high schools, that kind of stuff, to really help those students get prepared or get ready when they come to Compton College. I think that makes a huge difference. So whatever we can do to help you guys, we're here. And that's one of the things I push Teresa Tena to figure out on our end. It's like, those things around, what are those best practices that are happening, and how can we apply those to situations like Compton?
If I could just make a comment in regards to how you can help us, is the Triple SP and the Student Equity Funds, with the increase that we received for Triple SP at Compton, we went from $400,000 to $1 million, and then also we were able to receive student equity of $400,000. We were able to begin addressing, as Vice President Perez mentioned, the males on campus, and also look at the African American students. Now we have funds available to be able to start impacting those populations. So one of the ways that you have helped us was by supporting the funding for Triple SP and also providing funds available to us with student equity. That has helped us tremendously over the last year.
I want to thank you for this presentation and this update. It's very encouraging. And I just want to say for the record, nobody wants the Chancellor's office and the system office to get out of the business of running local districts more than this Chancellor and this board. And so we are eager to accelerate whatever pathway there is to do that. And it makes it far easier when you have talented, committed leaders like yourselves engage with that process. But and that goes for our other district that we're going to be talking about as well.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
Our next item is item 4.2. It's an update on the situation at the City College of San Francisco. Chancellor.
Thank you, President Baca, members of the board. Similarly to the last presentation, I'm going to let Deputy Chancellor Skinner provide the introduction, and then he has a couple of colleagues from City College who are going to bring you an update on that institution. Eric?
All right. The format on this item will be very similar to the last, so I'll keep my remarks to a minimum. We're fortunate to have with us both Chancellor Art Tyler and also, first time you're meeting, at least in this capacity, our new special trustee, Guy Lease, our Dr. Bob Agrella, who had been the special trustee there earlier, announced his retirement, and he was at the college for roughly 2 years, about 1 year in the little over 1 year in the capacity of actually serving in the role of the board. And Dr. Agrella did some phenomenal work, and he definitely earned his retirement and decided to exercise that. And so we're fortunate now to have Dr. Guy Lease in that capacity. So you'll hear from the two of them about the current status at City College of San Francisco.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Skinner, and Vice President Estolano and members of the board. Thank you for the opportunity to serve, and Chancellor Harris for your opportunity that you've given me to work with the folks at City College of San Francisco. It's a challenge, but I think a real opportunity to be of service, and I appreciate that opportunity. I do want to mention that we would like to have had the president of our Board of Trustees with us today, but he's assumed a new position himself as an assistant DA in the Bay Area and could not be with us today, and I apologize for that. He would have been a great addition to our group. I want to comment on my full 3 weeks of work on the job. It's been a little bit of OJT, to say the least, to try to understand the role of a special trustee and to understand a college the size and breadth of City College of San Francisco, with currently about 80,000 students and large programs throughout our community at 10 different centers. It's a very impressive place. When I arrived, I certainly got a nice warm welcome from Chancellor Tyler and from Chancellor Harris on the morning of February 23rd. And then we immediately went into a press conference in which Chancellor Harris announced the acceleration of our Board of Trustees to come back into power and authority. And I think there's a welcome comment across our campus, even though some would like to see it accelerated much more. The fact that it was being accelerated, I think, was certainly welcome news. And I can't help but express to you how much I admire and appreciate the work that Dr. Robert Agrella did as the special trustee over those 2 years. He took on an enormous responsibility, and it's brought the college through some very difficult times with very difficult decisions. You had a great special trustee there, and I certainly hope that I can continue to fulfill that role. Our chancellor is going to make a presentation on the progress of some other areas on our campus and some of our history, and then I'll come back at the end and discuss the progress of the transition of our board towards the restoring their authority. Chancellor Tyner.
Well, thank you, Dr. Leese, members of the board, Chancellor Harris. It is my privilege again to be with you. And I know there are a few new board members, so I'll give you a quick and sort of thumbnail sketch of how we got to where we are, and then try to give you an update on where we are and where we're going. Approximately 2 years ago, this board authorized some support and assistance to the college, and it wasn't until June of 2013 that the ACCJC issued its order that it would terminate the college effective June 30th of 2014. In July of 2013, at your request, Chancellor Harris installed Dr. Agrella as the special trustee. Since that time, we have worked very diligently through several of the processes, to include an appeal process with ACCJC, which we failed at, and subsequently, thanks to the good offices of Leader Pelosi and the wonderful folks in the Department of Education, an agreement was reached with the ACCJC to create a new status called restoration. We applied for restoration, and as part of that application, we had to present our eligibility requirements, those 21 eligibility requirements that you heard about earlier from our folks at Compton. We completed all 21 of those and were approved for restoration at their June board meeting in 2014. Since that time, we've been preparing for our next opportunity. As part of the restoration process, I should say that we actually had a full team, perhaps the largest team in history, came to visit us from our peer institutions here and around the state, and Hawaii and the islands. That team made a recommendation to ACCJC that yes, we be granted restoration, and in January of this year, the commission did grant us that 2-year restoration status. That gives us 2 years to complete all of the standards. I'm very, very happy to say that the team, when they came, found a college that was much healthier and certainly much more aligned in compliance with the standards. Although we did have some 32 write-ups across the 4 standards, that's a lot better than what we started with perhaps 2 years ago in 2012. Starting in 2012, we had, between FCMAT and the accreditors, we had some 323 different items that we were trying to correct. Even though they didn't call them deficiencies, there was a discussion about deficiencies versus recommendations. They were certainly things that the college needed to correct, and we are very proud to tell you that more than 90% of those have been corrected, and if you just simply do the math, 32 over 323 is where I get the 90% compliance designation from. We are still in the process of completing those 32 write-ups. The college has truly banded together, I think, in a way that no other institution that I've seen in my near 20 years in this business has done, and I've been on numerous teams, as well as this is now my 5th college. So I think we are well poised to complete all of the actionable items that we must in this 2-year period. I'm very happy to tell you that We got a great vote of confidence from Wall Street just last week as an example of where we are. We too, like Compton, had some financial challenges. In the year prior to the termination notice being given, we had borrowed some $90 million from the county based on our bond cash that was in the county coffers. That's an extraordinary amount of money to borrow in 1 year. I'm very happy to tell you that this last year we asked for a line of credit of $15 million, and to date we have not borrowed one dime. But the folks in Wall Street, Moody's, last week moved us. We had been at BBB with a negative watch, and if you know how critical the folks in Wall Street can be, we've moved to AA3 with no negative watch and a stable outlook. That's almost impossible to do, and the thanks really goes to the faculty, staff, and the administration that have really banded together to help us get there. I know that there are folks that would like to see us do things even faster, and I can tell you that everybody is marshaled to try to do that. We expect that we will complete a self-study by October of next year. But before we get there, we've got a couple of other hurdles that we have to get by. As you know or may know, SB 860 was passed, the Leno bill that gave us stabilization. And so it was a 3-year stabilization funding model that was created for City College. This year we have 100% funding based on the 2012 year and FTES, which was approximately 33,000 FTES. Even though we're only at about 24,000 FTES, we've lost about 9,000 FTES since our initial challenges with the accreditation. As part of that, FCMAT will be visiting us in the first quarter of next year, and subsequent to that, I have to go before both the Leno Committee and the Senator Liu's Committee to make them assured that we are doing all the things that we said we would do in terms of compliance in order for us to keep the 3rd year of funding. Each year, if we don't get back to the actual funding, we will lose 5% per year. So it's pretty clear at this point in time that we will lose 5% of our funding for next year. And the good news is that with the non-credit enhancement funds being normalized and increased, the college actually will be able to weather that storm, if you would, or that cliff. We have an 8-year financial plan that we've been following. We've been funding an irrevocable trust to the tune now of about $2.5 million in that trust over the last couple of years. And I'm very proud to say that it's not just the dollars that we are putting in from the college side, but the employees have also recognized the need. And we've started, I think we're the first college in the state. Our employees through the bargaining units have actually decided to allow the employees to contribute to the OPEB funding. And so starting with new employees and then moving over the next couple of years, gradually, employees will all contribute to supporting the OPEB, which has now been reduced from about a $185 million challenge or liability to $175 million. In addition to that, once the self-evaluation is completed in October, we will get a team in November, and based on that team's recommendation, the ACCJC will determine whether or not we should go back to a fully accredited status. And I should change that because we have never lost our accreditation. We've always been an accredited institution, and as I've said publicly, my goal is to ensure that the college is accredited for the next 85 years. If not, we're celebrating our 80th anniversary, and I should say 80 generations. One other item that's on my list of things to mention to you, and that is the lawsuit that has been in the paper. The city attorney, Dennis Herrera, actually filed a lawsuit back in October of 2014. A decision was actually rendered on February 17th in favor of the people against ACCJC on one item, and that was that ACCJC had not provided the college with full due process. The judge's injunction ordered ACCJC to provide us a copy of the injunction notice. Interestingly enough, the final injunction was a little more broad than the initial or preliminary injunction. The preliminary injunction just focused on the 10 items that we had not been given due process. However, in the judge's final injunction order, he actually broadened that to cover the entire evaluation of the college. Now, ACCJC required that I send them a letter, or actually the injunction required that I send them a letter opting into this new injunction opportunity, which would require ACCJC to reevaluate the college as if we were turning back the clock to June of 2013, after we, being the college, have had a chance to respond to these items. It's not clear at this point whether or not it will be the entire set of issues that they found in June of 2012, because ACCJC has asked for a motion before the judge to correct the record, if you would, so that it only includes the 10 items that were not part of the due process issue. In any case, ACCJC has 40 days, and the clock is ticking, to provide me with a report on why and the evidence that they use to add those 10 items and perhaps even the whole series of issues and discrepancies that they found. But certainly those 10 items will be sent to me to be a clear and responsive report from us. We have 80 days to send that report back to them. I anticipate we will start that action no later than the 1st of April. Once ACCJC receives that report, they then have some time to review it, and they, by the injunctions directive, have to give us an opportunity before the commission to plead our case again. And at that time, they will have to make a new decision as to whether or not this college should have been terminated in June of 2013. I anticipate that we will hopefully do that sometime between June of this coming year and perhaps September. Just looking at the timetable that everybody has, it could be as late as September, but I hope it's earlier than later. The final thing that I think I'd like to tell you is that the college is stronger than I think it has been in a long time. I think the college is moving in a direction that the Board of Governors would appreciate, and I must tell you that your support and the Chancellor's support and his staff have been invaluable to me and the members of the team, including the faculty and staff. And I'll turn it over to Dr. Leese to make some final comments about the training of the board, who are now on a pathway to being restored. Dr. Leese.
Well, as I mentioned earlier, in late February, the Chancellor announced at the campus the accelerated schedule for the Board of Trustees to take over the full authority and responsibility in a phased-in manner over the next 4 months. The schedule is contingent on the board undergoing a series of professional development activities and continuing to operate as they transition into power in a way that is appropriate for a Board of Trustees. Our Board of Trustees includes 3 members who were newly elected in November of 2014. Their first official meeting wasn't held until January, the first meeting of our Board of Trustees in almost 2 years. To prepare for the transition to power, the board then has participated in or are making plans to participate in the following professional development activities.
Dr. Leese, we had some of that briefing, so if you can kind of consolidate your comments
Okay.
so that the board can interact too.
I'll be real quick.
Okay.
They went through some CCLC training for new trustees as well as the board chair training. They've had training since on the Brown Act, board ethics, board policies for board behavior, and meeting procedures. And I want to comment, last Thursday we had representatives of the League, Statewide Academic Senate, and the CEOs to provide a 3-hour workshop on consultation and how that system is designed to work. And we're currently planning training sessions on accreditation, labor negotiations, the 2015-16 budget, the board's responsibilities for self-evaluation, and the board's responsibility for the evaluation of the chancellor. And as I think you're aware of this transition schedule, I won't go into that, but it does culminate in July with the board assuming full control and responsibility, with the provision that the state special trustee will remain in a formal stay and rescind role. But we're certainly looking forward to that transition, and I can report that the members of the board have been very actively engaged in the professional development program. The board and the college community appear very anxious for the board to assume this responsibility, and it's certainly my hope that it will occur as provided in the accelerated transition schedule. But that's our formal presentation.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Lease, and thank you, Chancellor Tyler.
Mhm.
We have also received a number of written comments, and we have 14 members of the public who wish to address the board. But before we do that, I do want to let the board members ask any questions or make any statements or clarifying points that before we go into public comment, to see if there's any of the items can be addressed before that. Member Kaur?
I just had a question. So you said that their board of trustees hadn't met for 2 years?
Right.
Is that just for San Francisco, or is that?
No, because the board was suspended, the state special trustee held a meeting in which he was the board of trustees. So he was meeting and taking action, but the board itself was not.
Okay.
Thank you. Well, then we will go to public comment, if we can make a space at the table for any members of the public who wish to address the board.
I'm going
we'll go ahead.
Sure, I'm going to call up the first three: Keith Kimber, Wendy Kaufman, and Muriel Parenteau. And I will give you guys a 30-second warning when you're hitting close to 3 minutes, okay? I'll hit you at 2:30. Can I have a lady speak first? Okay. Yeah. Okay, Keith, Wendy, Muriel. Want me to look? Sure.
Okay, Keith would like me to go first.
And
I don't
before
care.
you start, Karen, can you also help us keep time, please? Because it's very important that we do that. And we're going to go in the order that we have the cards.
So we'll go with Keith Kimber.
Hi, my name's Keith Kimber. I'm a student at City College of San Francisco, and I'm here to express my dismay at the fact that the special trustee with extraordinary powers is continuing to exist at our school. The city attorney's lawsuit directly proved that the whole reason for there being a special trustee was invalid. There's no logical reason. Neither Bob Agrella nor our new trustee have ever been an elected member of a board of trustees. I actually served 3 months as a student trustee in Los Rios in 2013, so I actually have more experience being an elected official than they do. That's kind of sad. So I don't see that how somebody that's not elected can be even responsive to the needs of our actual community. A particular note is that Mr. Harris, during the trial, I was there, I heard it out of his ears, said that he put in Agrella because Barbara Bino had told him that if he had done this extraordinary act, that's what would save our school. And in fact, that didn't do it, and it took a lawsuit. And then subsequently, it was the judge's action, which Chancellor Tyler has been reported in the paper last year saying that the court's not the way, that we should just trust them, when in fact it was the courts and the city attorney that saved it, further demonstrates the fact that we don't need to have a special trustee and that they're not acting in our best interest. I've noticed a lot of good things, and it's mostly been the strength of the students and the faculty that have stayed there they've kept it strong. But in particular, I noticed our student trustee over the last 2 years, she hasn't had any access. They haven't listened to her, and instead they've said they've talked to other students, but it's been weird because I don't know who they've talked to, and it's been hard for us to actually have public comment. And the fact that our student trustee didn't even receive the same materials that the special trustee received from the chancellor of City College still seems to be a violation of the Ed Code, which says that the student trustee should get everything. Because, as you know, as a student trustee, they don't have any actual legal responsibilities anyway, so I don't see how the Title V regulations would have kept them out of the loop. And it seems like there's been a lot of intentional actions to keep our voice suppressed. And I think at this point that you guys should exercise your power to put our elected board back in now. This is the United States. We opened this meeting with a pledge to the
3
flag
seconds.
and for what it stands. And this is a country that stands for democracy. So if we really believe in that, we should restore the elected board. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Wendy Kaufman, followed by Muriel Pronto.
Hi, I'm Wendy Kaufman. I'm an engineering instructor at City College, and I've been there for 31 years. You've heard from me before, and I actually recently wrote you a letter, well, not just me, but a lot. It was signed by many people regarding the current situation at City College, and I hope you all read it. I'm here to join the deafening chorus from City College to say that the state takeover needs to end now, yesterday. Okay. Is this better?
That's fine.
Go ahead.
Okay, how's this?
Keep
All
going.
right.
Keep
Just
going.
keep going.
Our Board of
Right.
Trustees need to be reinstated immediately. They never should have been disempowered in the first place. The reason for installing the Special Trustee with Extraordinary Powers, the STWEP, was deeply flawed, and I've been before you a couple months ago talking about those flaws specifically, so I won't repeat it now. But of course, we now know that new evidence has come forward with the lawsuit and the fact that the process that led to the installation of the STWEP was not just flawed, but illegal. Without our elected board, there's no democracy and no transparency. And I cannot emphasize enough the lack of transparency and how destructive it's been in our school. I know that each of you here holds the values of democracy and transparency. I've heard Chancellor Harris talk about it and the desire to return our board. You know, many of you actually I've heard say that there's a desire to have our board returned as soon as possible. I don't understand that with the departure of STWEP 1, why we weren't returned to local control. That question has never been adequately answered. And you know, furthermore, I think it's quite insulting to tell our Board of Trustees, especially the recently elected ones, that their return to power is contingent upon professional development. Now, of course, they all welcome professional development, but to be told that their return to power is contingent on it is not just insulting, but it's exceptional. No other college in the system of 131 different colleges have their boards go through a special training before they can have their power. You know, it's also really objectionable that the special trustee will remain on even after July 2015, when supposedly the 30 board seconds. has their full power back. But he'll have stay and rescind powers. When we search for answers about why we need a STWEP, you know, we look at different things that are happening. Tom Amiano, a former assembly person, said in a recent podcast that an official in Sacramento told him that Mayor Lee wants the state takeover to continue so that real estate deals could be made with City College land.
I'm sorry, Ms. Kaufman, your time is elapsed.
Okay, well, I just want to mention the Civic Center campus, too. We're very concerned that that's going to be sold.
We have Muriel Pronto, followed by David Morris and Tween Nguyen.
Hello, members of the board. My name is Muriel Parento, and I am the Department Chair of Disabled Students Programs and Services at City College of San Francisco. DSPS currently serves over 2,000 students with disabilities and assists them in participating in an accessible, affordable, quality education. I want to tell you that the faculty and staff at City College are resilient, creative, and committed to meeting accreditation standards while offering an exemplary education to students, especially high-risk students, students with disabilities, second chance students, foster youth, and new immigrants looking to a brighter future. This all continues even with the enormous stressors unjustly imposed upon us with the removal of the elected Board of Trustees and the appointment of a special trustee. City College of San Francisco has a democratically elected Board of Trustees, which should be reinstated immediately. The actions of the previous super trustee have not fostered a positive learning environment. Threats of closure and infusing fear and distrust in a college community are not the best way to bring about change. Currently, City College administration has chosen to spend over $4 million on consultants, while faculty are getting paid below a 2007 wage level. The ACCJC cited that City College did not have enough administrators, and today the Vice Chancellor of Instruction position will be vacant soon, and the Vice Chancellor of Student Services remains vacant. This threatens our accreditation. We need complete transparency around budgeting and the hiring of administrators. Is City College better off today? Absolutely, but not because of the special trustee. The changes that have taken place at CCSF are done by dedicated faculty and staff that love City College and love City College students. The City Attorney's court case brought many things to light. The reasons cited to put City College on show cause were based on inaccurate information. The ACCJC visiting team did not recommend that City College be put on show cause in 2013. Barbara Bino took it upon herself to change that final report. Peter Goldstein, the CFO at the time of City College, testified at the trial that City College has never been in a financial crisis. We passed Prop A, we passed Prop 30. City College is stable. Mr. Bryce Harris has stated that if he knew then what he knew now, he would not have removed the Board of Trustees. In the end, Judge Carnell ruled that the ACCJC acted unlawfully. Therefore, the removal of the board was unjustified, period. It is unwarranted, unnecessary, and undemocratic to wait 4 more months to seat our Board of Trustees, and if and when you do, continue the presence of a super trustee with veto power. City College has demonstrated its ability to change and govern itself. We need an
I'm sorry, Ms. Parento, your time has elapsed.
Thank you.
Thank you. David Morse, followed by Thuy Nguyen and Elisa Messer. If you all can come forward, that would be helpful.
Okay, President Baum, board members, Chancellor Harris, Thuy and I decided to come up together just to express our joint interest and enthusiasm for continuing to support City College of San Francisco on behalf of the Academic Senate and the Community College League in terms of returning them to full accreditation status and the restoration of their elected board. Last week, we conducted a governance training for their elected trustees with the participation at the table of their Academic Senate president and with the help of Peter Garcia of Diablo Valley College and Helen Benjamin, the Chancellor of Contra Costa. And I think we both felt that the board was extremely engaged, very competent, and that we very much appreciated the interaction with them and felt that it was a very positive discussion and experience moving them in a very good direction. So we thank Special Trustee Lease and Chancellor Tyler for inviting us, and again, offer our pledge of continuing to try to help and support and to restore City College of San Francisco fully. And Thuy?
Good afternoon. Thank you so much, Dr. Morris. Good afternoon. My name is Thuy Nguyen. I'm interim president and CEO of the Community College League of California. We are very fortunate to have been invited by City College to come in again and to provide technical assistance. We have, as a tradition, partnered with the State Academic Senate to provide these technical assistance on participatory shared governance processes. And this particular workshop is needed because as the trustees receive their, is slated to receive their full authority and really be in the mode of decision making, it's also very important that they understand the participatory governance requirements as they make these decisions in the future. I have with me in the audience our Vice Chair, Frank Gornick of the League, and 2 of our trustees, Honorable Linda Watt and Honorable Pam Hayes. And when we came to this workshop, we normally would have 2 people at this workshop, but instead we had 4. And as Dr. Morse mentioned, the other 2 individuals. And the communication we sent to City College was that the country is watching, and we have, as the League representing 448 trustees and 132 CEOs, we have a vested interest in City College being able to come back and rebuild itself. And that is why we are committed to being there. We have, as a consequence of the trustees, new trustees workshop that we conducted with the League earlier this year in January, which, by the way, even though it's a new trustee, all of the trustees of City College attended, even though 3 were new. All of them attended, recognizing the need of refresher courses around this. And they have since then invited us to come back with this shared governance workshop, and we have been invited already to come back and help them even rebuild furthermore. So we welcome that opportunity to assist Chancellor Harris and the board, and particularly City College around that. Thank you.
Thank you. We have Elisa Messer, followed by Alan Fisher and Dr. Anita Greer.
My name is Elisa Messer. I'm an English teacher at City College of San Francisco, and I'm here today to represent AFT 2121, our faculty union at City College. There are a number of things that I wanted to say today, and I thank you for the opportunity. One of them is that it's great to hear President Baum and others talk about the desire to get out of the business of running community colleges, because this board has a lot of responsibility and this office has a lot of responsibility. So that's encouraging to hear. As you know, we don't think it's soon enough. I think we've made that very clear, and I sort of echoed the sentiments of my colleagues who have been up here before in talking about the need for a return to democracy at City College of San Francisco. That's something that we can't see soon enough, and I just want to echo that and say it again. One of the unfortunate side effects of having a special trustee with extraordinary powers who held meetings, actually didn't quite hold meetings, held meetings on his own, in his head, made decisions that were not transparent, is that we now have a college where we have a lot of issues around transparency, where people don't know what's going on, and we're trying to get back there, we're hoping to get back there, but we need you to know that we need a transparent democratic college, just as we all need that in order to move forward at City College and to help our students all over the state as well. That's key. That's really a central thing for us. And for our college to move forward, it's something that will need to happen. And we're going to continue to say it again and again, and we're going to continue to work towards that. Additionally, ACCJC, the Accrediting Commission, following the People versus ACCJC, which you heard Chancellor Tyler talk about, has been shown to have broken the law and has also been shown to not be above the law. And that's a very important thing to note. And I know all of you have been following much of this closely. So I wanted to remind you about 3 things that the Board of Governors could be involved in and could be looking at in terms of moving along a fair accreditation system for California's community colleges. The first is that you've taken steps to find alternate accreditors. And I couldn't help but think when I heard that terrible news for Compton College, 8 to 10 years. It's already been 10 years. Whether moving to a new accreditor sooner rather than later might make it possible for Compton to get its accreditation
30
back
seconds.
sooner. Secondly, there is reform legislation that's moving forward in Sacramento. We ask you to look at that and to support that, several bills. And thirdly, your accreditation task force, which is a consultation task force, has been put back together for a 3rd time, hopefully this time to really move forward and make some courageous steps towards what the California Community Colleges system governance can do to
Ms.
change
Messer, your
our
time's
accreditation
elapsed.
system. Thank you.
Alan Fisher, I asked Dr. Anita Greer and Mr. Roger Scott to come forward.
Hi, my name is Alan Fisher. I'm a 35-year faculty member at City College. Prominent officials in the California legislature and the U.S. Congress concur the ACCJC treated City College unfairly. The California Superior Court found that ACCJC violated the law in several areas. The San Francisco City Attorney demonstrated that the ACCJC allowed its own views about education, its controversial views, to affect its decision about City College. When the ACCJC site evaluation team unanimously decided to put City College on probation, Barbara Bino unilaterally overruled the team and decided to discredit City College and gave it a year till closure, despite City College's superior outcomes on the Chancellor's scorecard. Despite turning in a balanced budget and overseeing the stringent internal reforms and financial sacrifices demanded by the Commission, the Board of Governors removed the elected Board of Trustees, undermining democracy. So we have an unelected appointed Board of Governors firing an elected Board of Trustees. At the urging of the ACCJC, the Board of Governors imposed the destructive special trustee with extraordinary powers regime marked by unilateral and opaque decision-making and the spectacular failure of the one mission he was appointed to accomplish, protecting the college's accreditation. The current administration has been secretive, inept, and made bad decisions that have contributed significantly to the sharp fall in enrollment, with the overwhelming majority of dropouts coming from disadvantaged communities. For example, the abrupt and radically disruptive closure of the Civic Center campus recently essentially pushed out 500 immigrant ESL students. Under pre-ACCJC administrations, similar changes were well planned and orderly. We know that powerful people whisper that City College is too big and must be downsized. This isn't a manufactured crisis. In part, it has
30
to do
seconds.
with an agenda seeking to open market share for the predatory for-profit schools, which leave students with no credentials or worthless credentials and mountains of debt. Former Assembly Member Tom Amiano said that a highly placed person in Sacramento told him that Mayor Ed Lee wants to delay the return of our elected Board of Trustees so that powerful real estate interests can push through big deals without public oversight. Chancellor Tyler has
Mr.
contracted
Fisher, your time has
with
elapsed.
CBRE, the largest commercial real estate company in the world, to advise in how to use the 33 Gulf Street property for development.
Mr. Fisher, you
and
need to
extremely
conclude your
valuable
remarks.
land. So we want to know if irreplaceable public land is being forked over to downtown real estate developers in a corrupt manner, and if this is
Thank
an
you, Mr.
unstated
Fisher.
reason for the state takeover.
So
The
we have to
incompetence
turn
of the
to,
present leadership
to
may
Trustee
allow
Greer.
the ACCJC.
Mr.
Sir,
Fisher,
we're
your
gonna have to
colleagues
ask
would
you
also like to
step away
speak.
from the microphone.
Dr. Greer.
Actually, we're sharing the time in our speech, so is it possible for
Yep.
Dr. Scott to go first?
Absolutely.
Oh, and I must say, I feel a bit like an unrepentant prisoner coming before a parole board. We urge the Board of Governors and Chancellor Harris to restore immediately the City College Board of Trustees to the decision-making powers that the 40 to 100,000 voters in San Francisco have invested in each board member over the past 7 decades. We passionately share the logical, rational, and democratic view that the collective judgment of the 8-member board of 7 trustees and the student trustee reaches through open discussion and a valid majority vote is always superior to the judgment of one individual, a special trustee with extraordinary powers who has no procedural, fiduciary, or electoral responsibility to justify his decisions to anyone in the city of San Francisco. We have harshly criticized Chancellor Harris, members of the Board of Governors, the City College interim chancellors, and Special Trustee Agrella, and of course the ACCJC. We stand by those strong criticisms and have more to add. However, we see a way for you to right some of the wrongs you have perpetrated, especially during this accreditation process. We propose that after restoring full decision-making powers to the City College Board of Trustees, you leave in place Special Trustee Lease, but in an advisory capacity and only until the end of June 2015. Many of us have worked hard to, and will continue to work hard, to ensure that the programs and services that so many people need will survive, even though some of us believe the ACCJC has abused its power and has no integrity or credibility as an evaluator of individual community colleges. We prefer to reason with people like you who have considerable power over the 112 colleges in one of the world's greatest educational systems. However, you as a body don't always appear to understand that the people have greater power and authority than you do. and there are many avenues of struggle available to us. We understand and support hard work, legitimate reform, systematic problem solving. We also understand the moral and political power of mass mobilizations, community organizing, broad political alliances, and strategic civil disobedience, which we're willing to commit and feel morally obligated to do so. We welcome cooperation
30 seconds.
with the Board of Governors, but as I think you've come to understand, we're perfectly willing and capable of accommodating your opposition and illegitimate intervention whenever it's necessary to do so. Good afternoon.
Thank you. Dr. Greer.
Good afternoon, Chancellor Harris and Board of Governors members. I'm Anita Greer, a past board member at City College for over 16 years. I come to you today as a former student, lifelong student of City College, and I'd like to finish what Dr. Scott had started. The two of us and some of your other critics haven't given Chancellor Harris and the Board of Governors the highest marks in logic, imagination, integrity, and public policy wisdom. But some of us believe you must see that having a democratically functioning Board of Trustees and a special trustee, Lease, adding his voice, not as a dictator, but as an experienced educator, consultant, and administrator, would demonstrate to our students and our potential students and the public that City College is no longer a college in crises under feudal authority, and that civic lessons in actual democracy with the accompanying public relations would be a big step towards solving our enrollment problem. No matter how complex and morally relativistic the world becomes, individuals have a responsibility to use whatever power they have constructively and humanely. It's hard to imagine a more humane issue than ensuring that City College continues to serve 80,000 to 100,000 students who have few or other opportunities to improve their lives. You shouldn't lose any sleep over the comments today that you regard as possibly demeaning and insulting. But if you fail to help City College become the most democratic and effective college of the people it can be, your conscience and your analytical faculties should get in touch with you. Thank you.
Thank you. Richard Hansen, followed by Dean Murakami and Anne Marie Fleming.
Good afternoon. I'll be brief. In the Bay Area, we have a faculty group that gets together once a month. We are sometimes called the Bay 10 or the Bay Faculty Association, and we've heard of the struggles at City College over these years at close quarters. So I certainly want to honor the faculty and all of their efforts to right things there as they went through this process, but also the students, staff, and administrators. But I also want to thank you, the board, and the chancellor and his office, and how you have worked toward getting this restoration process accelerated, designed and accelerated. But in what I'm hearing today, I feel there's still maybe some room for you to consider with good recommendations being heard, and the ability maybe to think about the timeline, and maybe also then the role of the special trustee when it does come to an end. And I just ask you to do that for us. Thank you.
Thank you. Dean Murakami.
Thank you. So I'll be somewhat brief as I can. I also want to just to make the statement to expeditiously, please, restore the authority of the locally elected Board of Trustees. I just want to say one thing that I don't think has been adequately expressed here today. With the appointment of the special trustee, and I understand this is an arduous process. You had your responsibilities to take care of and the process to do, and I understand that perfectly. But when it came to the Board of Trustees, not only did you remove the authority of the locally elected board, but you also had made a very detrimental impact into the shared governance process and structure at City College San Francisco. And that, that has been a very long-standing operating culture there at City College. And while some people from the outside look at that long-standing culture as a weakness, really that is the underlying strength of what City College is all about, their culture and the way they operate. And really, it is that strength in culture that is what is going to regain the accreditation status of City College of San Francisco. You know, when you think about, again, restoring the authority of the locally elected board, I want you to please pay special attention to restoring and restructuring the shared participatory governance structure at City College of San Francisco, because that structure and that process of that has been worked, that took so long to create at City College of San Francisco. That's what makes City College of San Francisco City College of San Francisco. Thank you.
Thank you. Anne-Marie Fleming, followed by Margaret Hani-Manalas, sorry if I got that wrong, and Harry Bernstein is our final speaker. Yeah, go ahead, Anne-Marie.
Hello, my name is Anne-Marie Fleming. I'm a retired faculty member. I would like to read a statement by Christine Hansen, a concerned community member who could not be here today. And if I don't finish her statement, my colleague will continue. So to the Board of Governors of the California Community College, I am writing in regards to the anticipated report to be given to the Board of Governors on Monday, March 16th, 2015, suggesting the progress of City College of San Francisco under the administration of your special trustee with extraordinary powers. One glaring question is likely to go unanswered. What has transpired, according to Robert Arriguella, during the time of his tenure as special trustee? At the last convening of the Board of Governors, Robert Arriguella was scheduled to report, but his schedule apparently would not allow him to attend. As you know, he has retired, and so Guy Leese has taken his position and will stand and has taken his position. The lack of transparency and accountability fostered by the imposition of your special trustee at CCSF has affected numerous areas. I will attempt to explain a few of them here and request that you ask questions of the representatives of City College that will stand before you. Why, after 2 years, is the administration still negotiating contract of the 60-person union of department chairs? Why did the administration approve $100,000 for lawyers to oppose this small union? The amount is significant when you consider that prior to Arriguella's tenure, the entire legal budget of CCSF averaged $50,000. So what is Sacramento paying for these lawyers in their roles as negotiators? In your role as architects of the special trustee position, the Board of Governors are entitled to know the answers because these lawyers are working for you. The building and development environment at present in San Francisco is unusually extreme. Housing needs
30 seconds.
Housing needs driven by highly paid tech workers are gentrifying neighborhoods that house middle class and working poor. San Francisco landlords are evicting their tenants so they can sell their buildings at a huge profit to developers. It is the environment that City College is thrown in without the protection of transparency and community input. City College administration under Arriguella's leadership began with the property on Gulf Street to talk to developers.
Ms. Fleming, your time has elapsed. Thank you. And we do have the text of the letter for us.
I'm picking up. My name is Margaret Hansi-Manolis. I'm a part-time faculty in the English department at City College of San Francisco. I also teach at De Anza. They haven't gone through the regular city governance channels, and this has prompted San Francisco Supervisor and Land Use Committee member Jane Kim to make the observation that City College appears to be making up their own rules. Under the present system in place with your special trustee in charge, there are no community checks and balances, that's the Citizen Oversight Committee, processes that would normally take many months or even years of deliberations to complete have been decided in a matter of days and weeks. And however, by one person, and this runs the risk that errors or legal problems that could arise from the lack of the proper due process in the sale of real estate. The Board of Governors should ask for a full accounting of the plans of this administration regarding the acres and acres of expensive real estate under their control. Development of property that is neighboring to CCSF has also been affected by the fact that the City College's community voice has been silenced. At City College's Ocean Campus, Mayor Ed Lee has declared property being used for student parking surplus land and marked it for development. This property was part of a land swap between SFPUC and CCSF. This land exchange took many years of meetings between the two agencies to complete and was part of the preparation for the multi-use building and the much-needed Performing Arts Center. Under the California Environmental Quality Act, the neighbors of any development must be considered before developing, yet there has been no mention from the administration of any communication with SFPUC or the mayor's office regarding this property. How does the administration expect to meet the needs of the students if the parking lot is removed? If homes are built on this space, will those homeowners be competing with the City College students for street parking? How will this proposed development affect the traffic study of the completed EIR for the Performing Arts Center? One of the primary actions of your trustee, Agrella, was to cancel the Performing Arts Center. Though referred to in the media by Agrella as an auditorium, the PAEC will provide much-needed classroom, rehearsal, and theater space. The present facilities being used by the performing arts students at City College were designed to accommodate only 400 students, but 3,000 are currently enrolled. This is a problem with the accreditation in terms of Standard 3 facilities. We have inadequate facilities for our theater and arts programs. There's mold. I was on the self-study Standard 3B accreditation self-study process, and I have to say in that process that the administrators were missing in action. There were two administrators, Virginia someone and Ron Gerhard, who were both supposed to be doing editing on that, but the faculty had to wait for answers, and we got up to the night before it was done, and our administrators are not helping with the accreditation process.
Ms. Honeyman-Ellis, your time has elapsed. Thank you. And then finally, Mr. Bernstein.
Yes, I associate myself with Christine Hansen's remarks. I'm glad you have the copy. It's a 650-seat auditorium, by the way. So, briefly, several topics. For the many reasons heard today, I concur with the call for the immediate return of the Board of Trustees. Meanwhile, I object to Chancellor Harris's claim that the special trustee retains stay and rescind authority, basically veto power, even after the board returns to power. Your own provisional plan on the return of the board gives the STWEP only an advisory role when the board returns to power. So don't permit this mission creep. He really is not needed after June of this year anyway. Second, Chancellor Harris testified that he advocated the disenfranchisement of our Board of Trustees in July of 2013 in collusion with Barbara Bino. This has been called to the attention of San Francisco's District Attorney Gasca. Now, larger comment. At last July's meeting, Vice Chancellor Skinner stated that there were oversight committees at City College regarding expenditures of public funds, but he didn't know their schedule. Audience members said they didn't meet, so your board asked for an update, which I think you have not been given. So here's my attempt. One committee is the Citizens Bond Oversight Committee to review expenditures of money from bond measures from 2001 and 2005. A series of capital projects, including several major renovations, began in 2004 with a 10-year plan, leaving only one project incomplete, the Performing Arts Education Center. The last required annual report of the committee was submitted in middle of 2013. Then the committee didn't meet again until November 24th, 2014, when with a bare quorum of 4, a key agenda item was a legal finding that money intended for the Performing Arts Center, one of the capital projects that the voters asked for twice, could be diverted to other uses. But this was done without offering any valid justification for doing so. The committee was informed that diverting the funds would cause the loss of state matching funds and make the Performing Arts Center project unfeasible. After that meeting, 2 members were termed out. They only have 3 members, so there's no oversight there. It'll happen later this year, maybe. The other committee is the Parcel Tax Oversight Committee for money, $15 million annually
30
for
seconds.
8 years, voted as Proposition 8 in November 2012. Money began to arrive in July 2014. However, the committee has not yet met yet. So where's the oversight? Although there was a new appointee as recently as January 2015. What is troubling is Special Trustee Agrella's comment in the month after the election he would not be bound by the ballot language in terms of how he would spend the money. Money was intended to stop class closures, loss of faculty, and supportive programs.
Mr. Bernstein, thank you. Your time's
Okay.
elapsed.
That concludes the public comment. We'll go back to board member comments and questions, if there are any.
I don't have any questions, but just
Member Baca?
just some comments. You know, thank all the presenters for their input. Take all that into consideration. I do want to thank Chancellor Tyler for a very thorough presentation on the history on what has been going on for the last couple of years for those of us that are new. I think that's very helpful for those of us that have been around. Just good to remind us of, you know, what actually has progressed over time. And Dr. Lees, thank you for taking on the responsibility here. I think I think everybody on this board and certainly I could probably speak for every person or everyone throughout the state in the community college system would like to see City College of San Francisco back to a status that is different than it's been the last couple of years, certainly. So I think we're all working towards that end. But I want to thank you and also the City College community for the work that's been going on, because it is moving. You know, I'm not living there, so I can't speak day to day what has been going on. But certainly, as we look at it, there's progress that's being made. And we do have other agents involved. You know, many of them are mentioned here this afternoon, and I think we have to recognize that the situation is a very complicated one. But I do think that it's moving in a positive direction, good direction. You know, it's not going to be Compton. It's just not going to happen. You know, we have that as an example of what can happen, and it's a long, lengthy process to get accreditation back. City College hasn't lost that accreditation, and it's not going to, because despite the challenges that are there, it's going to happen. So I don't have any questions. I just wanted to make those comments. Thank you.
Member Van Loon?
Yes. What are your current plans to ensure shared governance going forward? I know the transition plan passed by us was rather broad and it allowed, you know, a lot of local control over these decisions. Do you guys currently have plans formulated to ensure that there are voices of your constituents being heard?
We currently do have a participatory governance council that was formed before I got there. Over the last, I would say, year, they have started to act more and more like a participatory governance council. We've enacted several committees. We currently have a committee that is for facilities that we just formed. We also have a committee for accreditation. We have several other committees for planning that have been doing good work and helping us get through the process. But originally those committees, I think we had some 40-plus committees of shared governance, and it was truly called shared governance and acted as if it was shared. One of the reasons for the training last week with the board was to ensure that they understood, as we all do, what's in AB 1725 and what are the requirements for collegiality and for the various components or constituent groups to participate in that discussion about college matters. We are working towards that. am absolutely committed to participatory governance, and we will get there as soon as we can.
Okay, thank you. And I encourage you to keep developing those processes, especially as they pertain to shared governance and our constituent groups being able to input during the Board of Trustees meetings in particular.
Member Sumner.
Thank you for your report. It was definitely very thorough, and walking into take new footsteps, just walking in is a very challenging, and I understand that. But I mean, town hall meetings, and what concerns me is when you read in the newspapers and you do hear about property and everything with different colleges and everything coming up, I would be interested to see if there is any legitimacy in some of this. I mean, I know that could be a can of worms, and I might be saying something I shouldn't say, but when it comes to the community being involved with land and college campuses and improvements, I mean, it just seems like there's a lot of improvements that need to be done there to make it safer for the students, to lose an auditorium, to work within the community, to, has that outreach taken place?
I'll let you handle that.
Okay. The issue with Gulf Street was actually, and CBRE was actually a function of what the sitting board did prior to the special trustee taking over. They actually had a board vote that requested the administration to hire a firm, which was done after the accreditation issues happened, and Dr. Agrella actually approved the hiring of a firm as was requested by the sitting elected board. Moving, as you know, through a process, that firm identified what we thought were some strategic ideas, and we went out with an RFP, as we were required to. First an RFQ, and then an RFP to fulfill the wishes of the elected board. We have just opened the results and proposals from several developers as to ideas of what we could do with the property at 33 Golf. 33 Golf sits in what's known as the Octavia Market project for the city. We're sorely underdeveloped in terms of housing. According to the mayor's office, we need some 30,000 units of middle income and low income housing to support San Francisco today. And so we haven't finalized that, but we are looking at it as a revenue source. The idea would be to have a long-term lease, so we would continue to own the property. And currently that is the only real estate deal that we are looking at.
Thank you. Okay, just a couple of things on this. First off, thank you so much for the presentation, and we appreciate the public comment. There are so many signs for optimism about City College of San Francisco by every report, and we've been communicated with by Raphael Mandelman as well to talk about the progress that's being made, and that the college is on a very hopeful path toward full restoration of accreditation and full autonomy of the Board of Trustees, and we are standing shoulder to shoulder to support that direction, and we are eager to do that. In fact, many of us have been working in other capacities. I was with Vice Chancellor Stewart and others in Washington, D.C. with Congresswoman Jackie Spear directly. Now, there's two issues. There's the restoration of City College of San Francisco, and there's other concerns about our accreditation system in the state of California. We've looked at carefully the report, the audit that the Department of Finance and others have provided. And as you've seen, we've already taken concrete action in response to some of those recommendations. And I don't think that that I'm not hearing acknowledgement of the board's role in this. With respect to City College of San Francisco, I served as a local trustee for 12 years, including president of the Pasadena City College Board. I know how serious it is to disenfranchise the Board of Trustees. I raised a number of questions about this process and how what kind of step we were taking. We're full aware of what was going on, and I felt that it was necessary at the time, but I felt it's necessary to bring the re-empower and re-enfranchise the Board of Trustees of City College of San Francisco. There's been a tremendous drop in enrollment, but we're on our, I know the chancellor and the vice chancellor invested significant efforts to help market and recruit and work with local districts. But I got to tell you, and it was referenced in one of the comments here about the action and the tactics taken by those who claim to be supporting City College of San Francisco. But what I read in the press, what I saw fairly recently at a public event, the shameful behavior of people who are trying to destroy this institution and questioning the integrity of the people that are actually trying to save this institution was very shameful, and I thought is sending a message that's going to drive students away from this institution instead of attract students to this institution. And I just want to say that for the record. I think if we want to get this college back on track, we've got to rally and continue to work together and march together in this effort, because we're on the path, and behavior like I heard about a few weeks ago will damage the college in the long term instead of help it come back. And I just wanted to say that for the record.
Not as much as taking away our board of trustees.
And with that, we're adjourned until tomorrow morning.